Welcome to my podcast, Today's Dream, Tomorrow's Reality. My name is Vicki Poole. I'm a life coach, health coach, and a hypnotist at the Enlightened Peach. This podcast is all about embracing our mosaic life. And some of you may ask, what is a mosaic life? Well, it's recognizing that all the pieces of our life, the good, the bad, the indifferent, all have come together to make us who we are. Change any one thing and we are different. With that in mind, I invite you to embrace your perceived imperfections and celebrate who you are. And this podcast is unedited and raw, just like life. I will be your host, and we'll have special guests from time to time. And as a matter of fact, I have an amazing guest for you to meet today. I'll introduce her in just a moment. And if you have any ahas or questions, please leave a comment or a voice message. So now let's get started. So the person I have in front of you today, and we know each other just a little bit. We met in a group that we jointly were enjoying the hell out of it. But this is Candice J. Frazier. She's a certified master transformational health and life and mindset coach. And we actually, we went to the same school together, correct?
Yes, we went to HCI together.
So. Yes.
Yeah, we've been in the same circle since 2017.
Yeah, so it's amazing. She's a former certified medical assistant, an Air Force veteran, poet, author, and speaker. She has overcome the adversity of childhood abuse and trauma and is a 2-time suicide survivor. By implementing a holistic alternative health approach, she overcame her own health struggles. She learned how to rewire beliefs, set healthy boundaries with herself and others to overcome codependency, and discovered how to accept, let go, forgive, and unconditionally love herself. So without further ado, let me find you here. There you are. I had to find you on my screen.
It's okay. I'm here.
Hey, yay. So it's so great. And it was so interesting when we were both in this group and you were commenting and I commented on something and you said, I think I remember we went to school together. Not, I think we did. So it was really, really cool to reconnect and realize that this education that we had been in had expanded out and that we were continuing to find the same kind of groups to get together. So that shows that we are soul sisters at heart, right?
Absolutely. That is the vibe tribe, synchronicities, not synchronicity type of just how the mosaic of life unfolds. You and I have been dancing in this arena of enlightening others for quite a while, and we're out here finding our way, failing forward and still trudging forth, and just really embracing all of the mess and the muck, and just realizing that no matter what happens, we're going to find our way. But
definitely
interesting how we find our way into that group with other coaches and conscious business owners like ourselves who are here to empower humanity. And like that for me was a sign that I'm right where I'm supposed to be, because this is my tribe. And
that's right.
So for those listening, that's how you kind of know you're right where you're supposed to be. Those extraordinary outcomes when people that remind you of you and are very similar in things and ways and adventures that they're on, that's how you can tell you're coming closer to alignment with what your higher self wants you doing.
Yes, and definitely.
I don't know about you, but my higher self has been nudging me and pushing me ever since I found HCI, and I haven't stopped learning since. It's been a personal development journey. I thought I had one dark night of the soul and that was good and I was done. Oh no, there's a few more coming.
That's right.
Hold on.
Speaking of that dark night of the soul, let's go back. Because in your bio, it had said that you were a 2-time suicide survivor. Yes. And you had, was it domestic abuse? All of a sudden, it just went right out of my head.
Yes. Domestic violence, dysfunctional childhood. Until a few years ago, I had only known abuse. That's what I thought love was.
Right. So let's go back a little bit. because we're trying to keep this within an hour, and I really want to dive into a whole bunch of stuff.
Okay.
So go ahead and just kind of fill us in just a little bit, and kind of give us the cliff notes on some of it, so we can kind of stay within our time frame and still express everything.
Okay.
So how do you want to start with this?
Well, let's just kind of pop it off with, it comes down to life skill literacy and emotional and psychological and physiological intelligence, all of which my parents lacked. They had no idea how to navigate their own human experience, let alone they'll pop out a bunch of kids because they were just boinking like bunnies. Oh, now what do we do? Oh, well, I'm Gen X, so it's like, let's put them outside.
Yeah.
Well, let them come in at night,
Yeah.
So we was feral, but we were homeless, but we had a house, but we didn't. It was, yeah.
Yeah.
So, yes, clearly born in the 70s to a mother who was Catholic and unwed. And her belief was, if I have this baby, I'm going to be ridiculed. But if I have this baby, or if I don't have the baby and have an abortion, I'm going to hell. So, and this is a big part of my story, and this is a lot of what I teach. To understand who I am, I had to understand what made me me. And as you know, we learned in TCM that birthrights start at the moment of conception.
Right.
I was never wanted. I was a hot mistake, and so from the moment of conception, I was getting the message in all of my cells and all of my being: you're not wanted, you're not loved, it's not safe to be you, it's not okay to exist. And ironically, I was born premature, and I weighed 5 pounds, 5 ounces, that 5'5" number. And my mom said when she gave birth to me, they handed her me, and she just literally gave me to her mom and said, here you go, happy Mother's Day, because I was born on Mother's Day. So that was the beginning of my story. Come to find out years later, I didn't know that I was an unplanned pregnancy with someone else. I thought I was an unplanned pregnancy with the man that had raised me. But she was the babysitter, and this guy was married, and they canoodled, and ta-da, here I am. And so my mom was only 19. He was 50 something. So he was a lot older. And
well, I can say, just to interrupt really quickly, I used to babysit all the time when I was a teenager, and I don't know how many times the man would be driving me home, and suddenly his little hands would be coming after me and everything, and I'd quit babysitting for them and I'd go to somebody else. But it happened a lot.
Yeah. And I imagine with my mom, not to jump all over, but my mom, when I was abused by my stepfather, she was in bed when it happened, and she did nothing. And for years I thought, why didn't she do anything? I actually had a counselor tell me most likely she was in freeze mode because she had went through that herself. So she was in fear. It doesn't make it right, but damn, like when you have the bigger picture now, it's like, oh, okay. So fast forward, she has me and then proceeds to abandon me, leaves me with her mom, goes out parties. And, she's not emotionally mature at all. And she's dealing with her own traumas. So she doesn't have the skills. She doesn't even know how to love and take care of herself. So she just does the best she could. And then she ends up pawning me off as this other guy's kid, and the whole town knew I wasn't, which makes sense why people made fun of me and would talk behind my back, and family relatives would be just, I don't know. It was really weird, but looking back now, it makes sense. Anyway, the guy that she got pregnant with by me didn't want me. And so after her going back and forth with him a couple times and abandoning me with my grandma, the rest of the story gets kind of blurry for a while, because I'm putting together bits and pieces of what other people have told me, because she kept it to her. She took it to her grave. She died in 2013 and I found all this out. So from 2013 till now.
Is your grandmother still alive?
No, I'm an adult orphan. There are no grandparents. I have 2 uncles that are still left alive, but one's marriage because the stepdad wasn't really my dad. And so this whole time I grew up thinking these people were my blood relatives, but they weren't, which thank gosh, because the incest that happened and the abuse from cousins, like the shame that I was able to transmute, realizing that that wasn't blood, but then realizing, I'm not alone in this. There are people that happens to, and it is blood. How do you deal with the shame of that? You know, that's what drove me to get to the point to where I wanted to kill myself. And that was the shame, but also that impaired birthright of I wasn't wanted. And then I'm born into a family where I'm abused and neglected and abandoned over and over and over. And then enter in puberty, and I start being given alcohol freely. You know, the first time I got drunk, I was 5. Funny story. So they had a party. I don't know if you can know, back in the day, our families would have parties and there'd be all the adults and no one watched the kids. Well, I was in the house going behind everybody, tipping up the drinks and drinking what was left in them. I didn't know I was 5. And I woke up in the middle of the night, went to the bathroom, and all I remember is falling into the toilet and screaming to my mom, "Mom, help, I fell in the toilet and I can't get out." And she comes in and she's yelling at me, "What happened? I don't know." And then I hear her yell, "Jerry, she's been drinking." I was just like, so that same year I was sexually abused. I was forced by an older cousin. I was abused by my mom. She kicked me into the corner of a TV and cracked my head open, knocked me unconscious. That same year, I took a bunch of cold tablets, the contact cold tablets, thought they were candy, had to have my stomach pumped. Age 5 was a really hard year for me.
Obviously.
You know, and then lots of learning disabilities from the head injury. And one of the things that really made me different from that point on is I was having conversations with relatives that were dead that I had never met. And I was relaying stuff, and my stepdad was like saying, "I don't even know how you know that. You never even met them." I don't know. So clearly some weird thing happened from that head injury. And it only gets freakier as time goes on, because fast forward to age 12, when I'm attempt suicide for the first time. I believe it had a lot to do with hormones, but it also was at that same time, my stepdad, who had been sexually abusing me from age 9, stopped. And I didn't understand why. I was like, that was the only kind of affection I was getting, because my mom never said she loved me, let alone hug me or tell me I'm special or I'm smart. I got none of that. The only affection I got was sexual. And so it would happen when he was asleep, because I would be the one that was tasked to give him back rubs because he had a bad back. So his chiropractor taught me how to do massages. So from age 9 to 12, when this was all going on, I was the one that had to do the back rubs. So I would fall asleep. And the time that it first happened, I woke up and he was behind me, and I was like, what the hell is going on? So I just froze, because when I was 5, my cousin had told me that if I ever told anybody that it was my fault, that I would be the one in trouble. So shame and guilt. So I was locked into this cycle and didn't even know it. There was a subconscious dance going on, and I kept playing it out over and over again.
And that's what most abusers do, is they figure out exactly what to say to the victim to make them feel responsible and scared of saying anything to anybody, scared of being ridiculed, scared of not being believed, you know, all these different things. And so they are masters at all of that. So you go through, and you said it stopped at what age?
Age 12.
At age 12. And the thing that's interesting to me, just really quickly, that just popped in my head, is that, you know, you said that you wondered why it stopped, because that's what you were used to, the only way you got any affection. And, you know, a lot of people that deal with this kind of abuse and everything, especially when it starts at a young age, that's how they start feeling like they almost long for it, even though they know it's not, doesn't feel good, it's not right or whatever. And it can even start feeling good, but it's that, you know, that's, you know, a need that they have. And then if it keeps going, then they just start building up this guilt and all these different things. So do you know why it stopped at that age?
I started having my periods, and he didn't.
You were too old?
he didn't want to get me pregnant. And I think
Ah,
ironically, I ended up getting pregnant I just turned 15 when I found out I was pregnant, and the guy was 22. My mom's mom sent my birthday card, and basically accused my stepdad of having gotten me pregnant. And I was like terrified. I was like, oh my God, how does she know? I thought no one knew. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my, I was just like, oh my God. My grandma knew, I think. She had
yeah,
to have.
yeah,
But,
yeah.
and that's why
So,
they didn't allow her out after that. She wasn't allowed from age 12, was like 11. My grandpa died, my mom's mom, and my mom went into a deep depression after that. And after my grandpa died, my grandma wasn't allowed to come out to the house anymore. They didn't allow
mm,
her around. And I didn't know that then, but
yeah,
makes
yeah.
sense now why.
Definitely, yes. So let's go forward just a little bit. So this all stopped, and you're kind of wanting to know, well, what did I do wrong? Probably
Mhm.
is how you're feeling at that age, right?
Oh, absolutely. And add alcohol to the mix because my parents didn't say no to drinking. They let us drink. They taught us all how to cuss. Like they were teenagers raising kids, basically. Like they
Yeah,
were
yeah,
19 and he was 16 when I was born. So they didn't know.
yeah.
But so they had pretty much kind of locked me in this dance of neglect and emotional neglect. They weren't attending to my emotions. I had a lot of emotions. Like
I
I was
bet.
I was slightly autistic. I was most definitely struggling with developmental trauma, complex PTSD, which presented as what the doctors years later tried to say was borderline personality. And I'm like, no, 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 no. I never got a chance to develop my personality. So you can't say I'm any of that shit.
Yeah.
So I refused that label. Same with any of the mental health ones that they wanted to give me. So,
I think sometimes when they don't have an answer, they just have this little cute little list of things that they can say, well, that'll fit, and
yeah,
they
well,
just do that. So let's
because there's
let's go
funding.
ahead, and when you're looking at all of this, at what age did you do your first attempted suicide?
So it was very much around that. It was 12. I
Okay.
don't know the exact date because it's been so long ago. All I remember is we had been working on this garage project, building the shed out in the back. And I just was tired of being rejected. And my mom had probably done something again to where I was trying to get her to listen to me, and she just would not look at me, wouldn't talk to me, wouldn't, just complete narcissistic injury left and right. And I just remember I didn't want to hurt anymore. I was tired of feeling invisible. I didn't feel like anybody wanted me anyway. So I was just going to take care of the problem myself. I just wanted to go to sleep and never wake up again. So I took a full bottle of aspirin. There was 100 aspirin in the bottle. It was a brand new bottle. And they had these Doan's back pills that said may cause sleepiness. I'm like, perfect. So I think there was 8 pills in that whole bottle. So I took all those and I didn't tell anybody. And because I figured if like no one cares anyway, why should I say anything? And I went and sat in my room. And the next thing I know, I kept waiting to get sleepy, but I never got sleepy. So nighttime came and I'm still sitting there and I'm like wide awake, or at least it feels like I'm wide awake. I don't know. Fuck, who knows? Some crazy shit could have happened. I could have been dead for all I know. Because clearly I should have. At 100 aspirin, there's no way. At 12, there's no way I should have survived that. Like, that's toxic levels of aspirin. So I'm sitting there and all of a sudden my room is no longer my room. I'm now in space. I'm in the stars. I'm surrounded in the stars. I'm sitting on my bed, and these 3 bluish green aliens pop in, and they got big, big eyes, really tiny nose, like can't really see their mouth. And they're speaking to me, but they're doing it telepathically.
Mm-hmm.
And their message was, this mission was going to be hard. You signed up for this. You do not get to go yet. It's not your time. And I was like, what the hell? And then the next thing, I'm waking up the next day and I'm like, was I hallucinating? What the hell was that? Like, that seemed really, really, really real. And couple days go by and I'm not doing well. And my parents start to notice like I'm looking really spacey. So they thought that it was the like polyurethane stuff we were painting on the shed, because I was in there in the garage with my dad helping paint. So they thought maybe that's what it was. And I don't know why, but I told them, I was like, because I remember feeling really faint and just really weak. And I was like, no, I tried to kill myself. And they're like, what? You tried to do what? And I was like, yeah, I took the whole bottle of aspirin and all the Doan's back pills. My freaking dad, instead of calling 911 or rushing my ass to the hospital, he puts his arm underneath me and drags me out the house and starts making me run laps around the house. Like, excuse me, what the hell's that gonna do? And then takes me inside and starts making me drink prune juice. So for the next week, I had to drink prune juice, and I was grounded for quite some time. So,
well, she wants to commit suicide in her bedroom. For God's sake, let's make her stay there.
I know, like the logic. So after I got ungrounded, I started dating this guy who was older. Oh, so that was another thing. At the same time, I totally forgot about that. My first love, my first boyfriend broke up with me at the same time. My dad stopped having anything to do with me. My mom was, so I was like, I'm not wanted here. And so he broke up with me because he was moving away and he didn't want to hurt me, and his mom wouldn't let him talk to me. And well, we met back up years later, and he was like, I had no idea. He's like, he told me everything that happened. I was like, dude, I tried to kill myself over that. Like, so, but he also didn't know what I was going through behind closed doors. So, you know, it's the irony of how they would keep grounding me to punish me, but they would never actually teach me anything about myself, how to communicate, how to have a voice, how to ask for my needs to be met, how to interact with other people. You know, I was basically a slave. I was a modern day slave, because from age 8, when my mom got sick, up until I moved out at 15, I was the one that did all the laundry, the cooking, and the cleaning, not anyone else. I had 2 baby brothers, but they didn't have to do that stuff. It was all on me. So, you know, I got ungrounded and quickly was regrounded again because I went out to some church thing, but I was out with my 16-year-old boyfriend, making out with him on a picnic bench. And one
And
of
you
my
were
dad's
12?
12. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And so his friends saw me, and then my dad caught me in the lie because I tried to lie. And he's like, you sure that's what you were doing? I was like, yeah. I had no idea he knew, but that's okay, because I learned real quick not to lie, because the punishment's always worse than being honest. So he grounded me for a year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I was on even more chores and punishment and more isolation. And just that time of my life is actually a complete blur at that
So what
point.
grade were you in at 12?
6th.
6th? Okay.
Yeah.
So you were still going to school though, right?
Yeah, I'm still going to school. I didn't drop out of school until I was pregnant with my son, because I couldn't fit in the desk at school anymore. I mean, like, I was already embarrassed as shit, but now I can't like sit in the desk. So they put me on homeschool.
And you were 15.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was 15.
Okay. I'm
Yeah.
trying to make sure I've got that in my mind.
Yeah. So I'm 15, and my parents, as if it wasn't bad enough that I'm pregnant as a teen, their next thing was like, get the fuck out. You're not a problem anymore. Like, what, excuse me? Problem? And so there's that, oh, I was a problem. So again, I've been a burden my whole life. Now I'm a problem. Now I'm even more unwanted. Now I'm a pregnant teenager. My parents just drove me to Missouri from Illinois and forced me to get married to this dude. Like, literal shotgun wedding. And we come back from that ceremony. It was June 27th of 1987. And I remember that priest was so old that he was shaking when he was like, he's like 90 years old. He was shaking when he was writing. So the handwriting was like jiggity jaggedy. He smelled like he was dying because it was in his house. And it was like, I wore a blue dress and I had so much shame. I felt so ashamed. Like, and so I inherently created within my newborn or unborn child that same sense of not being wanted. I didn't know that's what I was doing, but in hindsight, if I could only go back, but I can't.
I know, but we can all say that about so many things.
Yeah.
But obviously, just to interject here, like the aliens told you that this was your journey, it's what you asked for. And I'll just share this real quick from a book that I've read. And I always can quote things from books, but I can't tell you what books they come from. So I completely apologize that I can't give somebody credit for this. But in this book, it's talking about how our souls get together and make the contracts. And this is the way they explain it. It says that
sounds like Journey of Souls.
I don't know.
Yeah.
So anyway, the souls are, it's like they're all these souls are at a bus stop. And while they're at the bus stop, they're all talking among themselves and everything. Yes, I'm going to go back to Earth as a person. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And one of them says, what are you going to go back to learn? He says, well, I really want to learn compassion. And he says, ooh, you want to learn compassion? Well, I kind of want to learn humility. How about when we get to Earth, we connect? Yeah, that's great. So these souls meet, and what happens is the soul that wanted to learn compassion is driving a car with his family. The one that wanted to learn humility crashes into this car, kills all the passengers except for the driver.
Oh my.
And so that driver was wanting to learn compassion. And so what they end up doing is having compassion for this driver. And, but all of these things that happened in the process helped them to fulfill those contracts that they had made when they were at the bus stop.
Yeah.
And so that to me was the most profound way of explaining it that I had ever heard. And it just really made me understand, how some of this works. And so even you made a contract that you wanted to learn the things that you learned by not being wanted and everything. So did your child. That was their contract. That's why they were brought to you.
Yeah.
Right. So, sometimes when we can think of it that way, I know for me, when I can think of it in that way, it takes some of the burden off because you did exactly what you were supposed to do, even though you would go back and change it if you could. But actually, that wouldn't be a good thing because that baby wouldn't have been able to fulfill that part of their contract.
Yeah, well, that baby actually, fast forward, he went to Iraq and Afghanistan as a Marine, and he came back and tried to kill himself twice. And on one of the calls, he called me and hung up. And the last words I heard from his mom, I love you, but I don't deserve to live, and hung up. So thank you for reminding me that, because that's what I found on my journey. And that's what helped me to transmute the pain and learn to forgive my parents, because I believe I did a 5-year-old meditation regression, and I asked my 5-year-old, what the hell am I here to do? You're just here to be love. You're here to show people how to be love. Oh, okay. And so that's what I do. That's what I'm here to teach is I want you to be seen. I want you to be heard. I want you to feel safe. I want you to feel wanted, because I didn't ever feel that. And I can now see through, as everything is played out, how I clearly chose unconditional love and forgiveness. Because when my stepfather passed away last year, right before he passed away, he had called, or before he got sick, he had called, and it was like he was saying his goodbyes and asking for forgiveness. And as much as there's this like part of me, the wounded part, she's got a lot of rage. And it took a lot for me to transmute that, to be able to be like, look, Dad, you taught me so many things that were beautiful, Like, I'm not focusing on all the hard things that we went through. And we never, ever talked about the abuse.
Of course
Someone
not.
brought that up. Someone brought it up at my mom's funeral because I had said something to a sister-in-law and she was telling everybody around town, and it got back to him, which is probably why he disinherited me as well in the will. But he's like, yeah, your so-and-so is going around town and saying that I sexually abused you. And I just went, my head went down real quick. And I just started shaking my head like, I don't even know what to say. Like, man. And I changed the subject real quick.
Yeah.
And it was real awkward. And just, I could see how there was this human who had done all these horrible things, but I always could see in both of my parents, these wounded kids that never got to feel safe and loved. They never felt wanted. So how the hell are they supposed to teach me that?
Mm-hmm.
And so that was the biggest part of my journey of transforming that whole belief and story around my parents. And, you know, I have so much gratitude for them now. You know, yes, there's pain, but I'm human. You know, I'm in the duality of, I see the hell that I went through. I'm on the bridge of neutrality and courage and willingness. And I see all of the possibilities that are coming from the hell and how I can create heaven on earth by what I focus on, by being love and being present in right now.
So let me ask you, so were you able to forgive him?
Yes.
You were?
Yes.
So what do you feel like, let's say there's somebody that's listening right now or watching that has a situation, may not be as dire as what you had, but a situation of something that's gone on with a person in their life and they just cannot seem to forgive. And the thing that's always interesting to me is that that quote is, what is it? Not forgiving someone is like drinking poison and expecting them to die. Because the feelings that you have and how charged they are don't really hurt them, and half the time they don't even know you feel that way. You know, it's all inner directed. So what would you say from your experience that they could do to maybe help bridge that gap from all the angst that they feel? Because like we know, forgiving someone is not giving them permission to do anything else, and it's not saying, you know, you're okay, you know, it's saying I forgive you, it's not charged, and I can still protect myself from you.
Yeah. Well, that's a very good question, and there's a lot around this. And one of the biggest things is forgiveness isn't saying it's okay what you did, but it's allowing me freedom from being in a state of shame, guilt, and antagonisticness in my consciousness, and lowering every vibration in my body, poisoning myself, not ever affecting you. And like you said, that's what it is. It's drinking the poison. And I'll show you here. This is the consciousness map. And
all right.
If you're at forgiveness, you're living at acceptance. So you're vibing at 350. But if you're down here in despair, regret, blame, humiliation, you're dying. You're dead.
And we're
You're
also,
dead.
whatever that vibration is, that's the kind of energy that we're bringing to us. So the longer you stay in that lower space, the more things that are going to happen to really solidify all those thoughts.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So for me, it was asking questions about what was the positive intention of this, and what is it? And this is where you get into this part for forgiveness. How can I find a view of life that's harmonious? What do I need to do that? Well, you've got to find meaning. You've got to step out with passion and purpose and get into allowing. And as I did that, this is what happens. I aligned with my vibe tribe. You know, I found the right words at the right time to ease the pain. I was allowing. So source was showing me all of the things in my illuminated mind that could show me how I was already in heaven without dying, or I could be in hell. So I had to die before I died. Basically, die before you die is to rise up into inner light and reason, which is the understanding like you and I have is, okay, well, I'm at Earth School. I came to learn lessons. Oh, holy shit. I picked the AP classes. I'm gifted. Start spinning put the positive spin on it. Like, I chose this. Like, I'm a conscious creator. And that is how you know that you are not a victim and you're a victor. And that comes back to another piece that I talk about. And I shared this on another podcast. If you're really wanting to heal, you're going to find success by searching however you can, whether it's free, whether it's paid. You're going to find a way to show up and do the work to heal the inner wounds that have happened in the past so that you can integrate and become whole again in the present, so that you can manifest more of what you want in each moment going forth. So it's you've got to face the pain. You've got to face the fear, and fear is what drives everything. And if you looked at this lens is a fear lens. This is a love lens. So until I started looking at life through what I call I put on my wonder love goggles and was like, I wonder what I can see that is lovely. Why is this happening for me? And so around that time is when that book Journey of Souls came out, and I heard about soul contracts, and I'm like, huh, karmic contracts. And the ex-husband that I had left the relationship from and divorced in 2018, that was a karmic contract. He was like a mirror image of me, and all of the brokenness that I'd went through, he'd went through it in some level or another. And we were just like toxic.
Yes.
But we were like we could not tear ourselves apart. We were addicted. And so that's the thing. Addictions, trauma is the gateway drug, y'all. Like, I don't care what anybody says, it's trauma. Because trauma was what wrecked me before I tried any other substances.
Right.
You
Well,
know, like
people do. And one of the, I guess, the messiest things is going through the process of healing all of this stuff, because it can be painful, you know, to do it. But anybody that's listening or watching, believe me, going through that pain and getting it out is amazing. There's a book that I love, and it's called, and I can't remember the author's name, but the book is called Feelings Buried Alive Never Die.
Yeah.
And the more you push things down and you don't deal with them, they're going to manifest somewhere in your body. They're going to manifest in something that's happening, or that's where a lot of basic bad illnesses come from. And it's just, you can't, it's got to come out. And if you don't get it out in a healthy way, it's going to rear its head somewhere. So before I forget, I wanted to ask, I know you said you were a 2-time suicide survivor. So take us on into the journey. Where did you try your second time?
That would be at age 25. And I wanted to on that, what we just finished up, that illness. My mother ended up with rheumatoid arthritis, which is feeling very put upon, inner critic, guilt, shame. And we know she was living with a shit ton of guilt and a whole crap ton of shame. And her negative voices inside of her head were bad. And it literally just deteriorated her joints to the point she could not even move forward. Like, so the Louise Hay, You Can Heal Your Life, check that book out. That book changed my life, because now I'm like, whenever I have any ache or pain, I go, what's going on? And I
have that book too, so I'll look it up as well.
Yeah. So like all the illnesses that I was having, because I had multiple autoimmune issues and all kinds of like random things was happening with my body, and all the tests were coming back. Well, this scan says fine. This scan says fine. We don't know what's wrong with you. But I had this constant pain in my right kidney. And Whitney Harris, one of our success coaches at HCI, I was on a call with her early on, and she knew about Eastern medicine. She's like, well, that's because you're not watering your own tree, honey. And I was like, oh, at that point, I was like worried. I was more concerned about making everybody else happy, because my belief was, in order for me to be happy and safe, I got to make sure everybody else is completely good. And only then do I get to be happy. Yeah, well, my body was screaming at me in the form of kidney pain. And they did all the scans and they couldn't figure out what the heck was going on.
But in some ways, you're lucky
causing-
they didn't find anything, because what happens a lot of times is they find something and then they start medicating and they start doing all these
Yeah,
things
they
to where
actually
you
did.
can't,
Yeah.
correct it, so blessings for
Yeah.
having that part happen, so it didn't
Yeah,
become a medical
exactly.
issue.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. They did end up finding a bunch of different things and put me on 11 different prescriptions. And I was taking 21 plus pills a day and was not getting any better. And it was, age 25, it was kind of similar. I was in the military, active duty, and then I got
What
out.
branch of
and was,
military were you in? I don't remember.
Air Force.
Air
I was
Force.
stationed in Abilene, Texas. And my kid's dad, who I met there, his family was from California. So that's how we ended up in California. So we met and married within 6 months, didn't even know each other. Like, I've learned my lessons about that now. But anyway, so we were together, and it was really good at first. But when you grow up with developmental trauma, and he had too, because his parents were alcoholics, it created a cesspool of two adults that didn't know how to cope with their emotions in a healthy way. So we were both drinking a lot, and both active duty. So we weren't doing anything other than drinking because you couldn't. But he started working nights, and so I wasn't seeing him. So then now I'm not feeling the love. And then I realized right after, was it right before we got pregnant with our son? Or, I don't know, but we went and got my oldest boy from Illinois and brought him to live with us because he had been through some trauma with his dad and stepmom. Like, I'm not even gonna go into that one, but it was horrible. Like, I'm trying to protect my kids, and like, it wasn't happening. So bring him to live with us, and we have our son, and we're fighting a lot. I've got severe insecurities. I'm really difficult as a partner. I can look back now and see how I was difficult, but all I wanted to do was to be loved. And anything that threatened that would trigger me, and I would react in a way that was very immature and selfish and narcissistic, and like, oh, it was bad. So I get pregnant again, like 8 months later. My son is 8 months old. I get pregnant again. And I was struggling with postpartum depression with him, because before I got pregnant with him, I was having flashbacks of stuff that had happened when I was younger, because I had stuffed it all down, completely ignored it until I couldn't anymore, because then I got pregnant, and that triggered me. And so I started going to counseling and therapy in my early 20s, and it was sporadic here and there, but there was so much to unpack, and I was so skittish. There was no one getting 10 feet. No, you couldn't get close to me, not with a 10-foot pole. Totally said that wrong. But so we moved out here from Texas. So now I've moved away from everything familiar. I'm in a completely unfamiliar area, no family, no friends except his family. And we move in with his parents, who were both alcoholics. And you can imagine, as his dad, older alcoholic, made it very uncomfortable. And I started just drinking a lot. I started smoking cannabis. I started popping whatever pill I could to fucking I didn't want to feel, because I was just overwhelmed and stressed out, because now I had 3 kids and was a stay-at-home mom and could not regulate my nervous system or my moods. And they had me on Zoloft for the depression before I got pregnant with my daughter, and they took me off of it. And then after I had her, they put me on Prozac. So she was born in April of 96. A year later, I had basically ruined our marriage, sabotaged the hell out of it, split up with him, tried to take the kids with me, but he's like, you're not doing that because you don't even know where you're going. And I'm like, all right, you're probably right. I should think about the kids. He's like, you can let them stay with me. You can come see them whenever you want. I believed him. I trusted him. And he started not letting me see the kids. He met someone else, and she didn't like the idea of him having me around the kids, which is weird. So a year after we moved here, I'd been living on my own from January till this was April 1st when I tried this one. I actually remember because it wasn't that long ago. It was April 1st. It was April Fool's Day. I was living in an apartment with two other men. One of them was my boyfriend and the other one was wishing he was. So he was always hitting on me. So you can imagine with the sexual trauma I had, how it was chaos. I didn't have any furniture, so I slept on the floor. But I was on my own. I was making like $5 an hour, struggling to survive. And my kid's dad, instead of helping me pay the bill on the car payment, had it repossessed out from under me. And at that point, now I'm really struggling. And I'm in this job that does not make me happy. I feel so much shame, so much guilt. My kids aren't with me. Like my whole reason for living is gone. Those kids were why I got up every day. Now I don't have them. And now he's not letting me see them. And it was just at that same time, the postpartum depression. I was hormonal because I wasn't eating properly. I was drinking alcohol, which I now know really disrupts your hormones. And when you've got brain traumas, that's an absolute no-no. And I didn't know all this then. So it was like a whirlwind of chaos. And then they poured Prozac on top of it. And so for me, none of those drugs have ever helped me. If anything, they have always made me worse. Mm-hmm. And I came home from the event. We were at Great America all day. We were supposed to be having fun. We were riding roller coasters, but my mood was just flat. I was just blunted. There was lights were on, but no one was home, is what I can kind of look back at now. And I just couldn't smile. Like I couldn't find a reason to smile. Everything was just like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. And I don't know how to make it stop. So I just went home and didn't even think, Vicki. I literally was like, oh, I forgot to take my pills. So I pour my pills in my hand and I take my pills. But the next thing I realized, I've taken the whole bottle, and it was a brand new prescription of Prozac. So fatal dose yet again. Mm-hmm. Here I am. And I'm distraught and I'm crying. And all of a sudden my heart starts racing. And I was like, wait, this wasn't supposed to happen. I was supposed to just go to sleep. Damn it. I just wanted to go to sleep. Thank goodness it didn't, because that prompted me to call my kid's dad, who was a paramedic at the time, and say, I'm sorry. Please tell the kids that I love them and I feel like they deserve better than me and I'm never going to be good enough for them. And I'm so sorry. Just tell them I love them. Candy, what the hell did you do? And I was like, just tell them I love them. And he was like, what did you do? And I told him I took an overdose. And he was like, what did you take an overdose of? And I told him, and he was like, hang up the phone right now. I'm calling 911. He calls 911. They show up, and I'm becoming even more incoherent at this point. And they take me outside, put me on the gurney. And right as they put me on the gurney is when I started feeling even more weird, because they made me drink a bunch of charcoal upstairs before they took me downstairs. And I remember telling them, like, look, I don't think I really want to die. I'm in so much pain and I don't know how to make it stop. I was completely overwhelmed and I was absolutely hormonal. Like, there are so many moms out there that don't survive that. Mm-hmm. I'm lucky I did.
And just to say really quickly, anybody that is resonating with this and they have any of these feelings like that, definitely reach out for help and, do a suicide hotline, do anything you can to keep from going to these measures.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you change your mind and they ain't no coming back.
Yeah. And luckily for me, it was an overdose that they could save me from, but barely. And I remember being in and out of consciousness in the hospital, and I could hear him out in the hallway crying, going, why would she do this? Doesn't she know that we love her? No, I didn't. And I remember seeing my monitor, my heart rate just doing this. And I woke up the next day and they took me to the behavioral medicine and 5150'd me for 72 hours. And they made me call my mom. So also at that time, I was remembering the sexual abuse. So it had come up and I couldn't deal with it. It was just too much. You know, I had my ex father-in-law hitting on me and being inappropriate, and no one listening to me saying he's being inappropriate. And so,
So let's fast forward a little bit. And you come to a place where you're able to take all of these horrible things that have happened to you in your life and repurpose them to become a new version of yourself, where you are actually helping other people to get over these things. Not get over is not the right term. It's to get through all of this to become who they want to be. And so where were you? I mean, how long did it take for you to go from that space where you've just tried to commit suicide for the second time to get to where you feel like now I'm on the right path and I can help other people to survive this as well?
well, I would like to say that that was in like 2019 when I'd finally started, you know, getting on my own 2 feet and was doing things. I had 2 podcasts that I was recording and hosting, and I was going to be doing international speaking on cruise ships, and then COVID hit.
Yeah.
And I took
So did that make
2020.
you kind of slide back a little bit?
It did, because when COVID hit and I lost all of those achievements that I had gotten, and everybody that I had loved and cared for and felt safe with turned their backs on me, I had found out that I possibly had thyroid cancer, and just
Which is manifested from all that stuff.
yes.
Keep going.
And at this point, the doctors, I'm telling them, like, look, my brother died of medullary thyroid cancer at age 49. I'm about to be 50. Like, can we take this serious? Oh, it's not big enough for us to biopsy. So yet again, I felt abandoned and neglected and left all to my own. So that really prompted another dark night of the soul, which ended, it was up and down. You know, I did different things trying to get myself out there. I started to try to do Lyft, as you know, it's, you know, like Uber, Lyft. I was doing that, but I constantly felt unsafe, and I was getting hit on. I was getting verbally attacked and verbally assaulted. It wasn't easy for me. But what I realized when I was doing that is I would share with people. I would just intuitively know what was going on, and I would bring up a topic and I would share where I was and what I was going through. And they'd be like, oh my God, I knew there was a reason I ended up in your car. And so I started seeing the synchronicities playing out, and I was like, I really can help people. Like, there's nothing for me to be ashamed of. I've been through hell and back, and I've got a lot of courage, and people are impressed with that. So I was able to see me through eyes of others
Good.
by being vulnerable. And so that's where this book was born, was in driving my car and counseling people. I was doing mobile coaching for free for people. And, you know, a lot of people said they wanted my card and whatnot. No one ever actually like invested with coaching with me, but I do know that I planted a lot of seeds. And one of those ladies I actually seen somewhere else, and she's like, oh my God, I remember you. She's like, you changed everything for me. I'm like, wow. So 2020 was going on. I was writing this book and working with a book editor, launched it in January of 2021. At the same time, my podcast co-host decided she didn't want to be co-host with me anymore because she had family stuff going on. So that dissolved. And I was like, yay, I did it. I'm a millionaire. I published my book. I'm an author. It's what I wanted to be since I was a little girl, because I was a fourth, fifth, and sixth grade. Even with all that shit going on, I loved school. That's where I got my attention, and I was the star student. I got Young Authors Awards, 3rd place, 2nd place, and then 1st place in 6th grade for short stories. So I did it, right? And I thought, yeah, you publish publish the book and then all you need is people to just see the book and then they buy it. And then you start making the big changes. Yeah, that didn't happen. Like I didn't sell any copies of the books right away, and it trickled here and there. But it was March of 2021, the depression, the hormonal imbalance, because I had gotten in an accident in February of 2020. Someone rear-ended me and it herniated 5 discs, subluxed a couple ribs, and caused more damage because the marriage that I had left in 2018 was another dark night of the soul, because that was the attachment issues to the narcissist and codependency. So I thought I was really struggling then, but that wasn't nothing compared to fast forward when now I've got out of all this and it still seems like I can't do anything right. And no one, everybody's talking about how they have all these addictions and all these problems with narcissist abuse and not loving themselves and, just being out of alignment. So I write a book about it, and it didn't seem to, I just felt like I did all over again when I was little.
Mm-hmm.
So I had tried to do everything I could to keep my shit straight while I was going through that car accident healing. But there was a lot of stress with the lawsuit and everything, and just the chronic pain because I couldn't sleep. So it's back to like, being right after having a newborn baby, you're not getting any sleep. Your hormones are wrecked. Your appetite's wrecked. You're not eating right. So everything's just wonky.
So how did you get out of that?
So I was really struggling, and my partner, who is significantly younger than me, was like, I think you should do mushrooms. And I was like, dude, I'm a coach. I can't be doing that. Like, I have a reputation, blah, blah, blah. And he was like, you ain't going to have no reputation if you ain't alive. Oh, I was like, well, at this point I am desperate. And I had done mushrooms earlier in my 20s, but not as medicine. I was just trying to be high and just be out of my head. And so the approach this time was different. It wasn't about getting high. It was about, this is life and death. And there are studies that show that when you have severe PTSD, this stuff really helps. And at this point, like, I was crying every day. I didn't want to get out of bed. I had no energy to face the day. My kids weren't talking to me. I wasn't getting to see my granddaughter. I was isolated and very, very unbalanced. And so I did the mushrooms. And when I was under the influence of the medicine, I kept having this, like, it's almost like you get hot and then you get cold. But for me, it was like, I felt safe and then I felt freaking terrified. And then I'd feel okay. And then I'd be like, I don't feel good. And I'd be like, hold me. I'd be like, no, don't hold me. I was just hot and cold. And we were talking about the loneliness that I was feeling and how I felt unwanted and alone. Again, it was coming up. It needed to come up to be purged. And my partner was being so sweet and loving and supporting me. And I'm just sitting here, just having meltdown and then laughing and then having meltdown and then laughing. And then I go, oh my God, I'm not alone. I'm totally tripping on something that has no merit here. And then all of a sudden I felt sick to my stomach and I was like, I'm going to be sick. I threw the door open and blah. So I'm looking at the vomit and it looks like the iris in the eye. You know how all the little fibers are?
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, it was breathing. And in that moment, I was like, there is so much more to life than just success. There is so much more to life than just death. It's about all the messiness in the middle, like you say, the mosaic. And the mosaic that I saw in that moment was, at all those times I felt alone, was the times I was the most surrounded. Like the little circle in the middle of my eye. Never alone. And so.
And just real quick, anybody that's listening, we're not saying you need to do mushrooms. No. Because this is an individual thing and this is something that helped her, but we're not saying that it'll help you at all. So just wanted to say that very quickly.
Exactly. And I don't advocate for people to just to just go do what I did. No,
Yes, yes.
it's your soul, your higher self is always guiding you, but you have to tune into Tokyo you and
Right,
listen. And
right.
that was me listening to my higher self had said that, but my ego was like, but why do people say? At that point, I didn't give a shit what anybody was going to say.
So
Because at that
so
point,
you've come to this realization that you were never alone, that you, no matter how bad it felt at the time, that it wasn't true. You did have a symphony of love coming around you, right?
exactly.
So then you proceed to go forward from there, and you start coaching and actually charging for your coaching, and
Mhm.
you're getting into a place where you feel good about the decision of where you are right now. So tell us a little bit about that.
So then that awareness, what had happened ironically from that car accident and right around that same time, I had what I believe is the Kundalini awakening. And I started having this massive flow of poetic words, and things were pouring out of me left and right. I was getting what I guess they call them downloads, because
Mhm.
I'm not hearing voices that are like weird or wicked. It was all these just divine wisdom. Like my partner was like, have you ever read Conversations with God? I was like, no, why? He's like, because it sounds like that's what you've been reading. I was like, this is what I'm hearing coming straight into me from source. And he was just
Nice.
like, wow. So at that point I went, hey, maybe there is something. So I'm surrounded. If you were to see my desk, I have poetry everywhere. I have like charts that I've created to help, like, I have this one, which is the consciousness one, but I have all of these too, which I started seeing
For those of
the
you who can't
correlation.
see, she's showing me a bunch of different little charts and everything. So,
Yeah.
because not everybody can see this, because I
Oh
will
yeah,
be
yeah.
sharing out. So a lot of it's just audio, but yeah, she's showing us
But
some really cool little graphs and everything that she's got on these papers.
yes, and those are what I share with clients. I
Hmm.
have created all these because of what happened with my brain injuries. The way I learn, I have to see it, I have to write it, and I have to speak it in order
Hmm.
to integrate it. And so I think that was what was happening with my healing. Because of the way I learned, I wasn't fully integrating my healing. So it was like fragments. It's like you're only getting you're getting
Only
little
getting
bits of
part
the
of it.
recipe. Yeah. So I didn't get the whole recipe all at once. It
Hmm.
took me years to get here. Well, now I
Yeah,
got the whole recipe. So my
good.
clients that come in, they don't got to take all those years and grief and all the shit that I went through, because I got it all perfectly laid out day by day, each step that you got to do to show up in order to
Perfect.
transmute that pain and transcend that cycle of pain. And that is what I have been playing with. And it comes in the form of just keeping it real simple,
Yeah,
showing up each day and being in appreciation, setting the intentions for what I want to do that day. Keep it simple. 3, go by the 3 things I appreciate, 3 things I intend to do. And then at the end of the day, 3 things I appreciated and 3 things that I intend to do for the next day. And that was book number 2 that I actually wrote during the month of my dad being sick and dying. I published it the day after he was passed away, because I just felt like I'm not going to let this hold me up one more minute. These people they've parlayed in my stuff long enough. It's time for me to
right.
rise and shine. And I have been with a fierceness like nobody's business since 2022 is my year of really integrating it all and really diving deeper into the understanding the consciousness, because that's where it all comes down to. I can now see how my parents lived through a lens of fear, and they never evolved out of fear. So they're
Hmm.
probably going to have to come back and do it again.
Yep, that's okay. That's their journey. Well, we're getting
Exactly.
close to time right now. So, really quick before we pop off, go ahead and tell people how they can connect with you, if there's a special place for them to go for the book, whatever it is that would help them to utilize your expertise right now.
Okay, so for the books, I would just suggest go straight to Amazon and Google my name, Candice J. Frazier. My books are listed on there, and I've given you the information, so it'll be listed in the contacts with the podcast.
Yeah.
They're on my websites, but you'll get a lot faster ordering it through Amazon. You can get them signed by me if you order them through my website. But again, it's just a lot faster. I plan to do book tours so you can get signed books at that way. As far as like to find me on socials, I'm most active on TikTok. I do share on Instagram and Facebook, but TikTok's really my jam because there's more of a community over there for me that engages with me, whereas I share on Facebook and Instagram and it's crickets. And for me, that was just it was too triggering, and it didn't seem like that's where my people were living. So I'm like, that's not for me. And so
so on TikTok, would they just be Candice J. Frazier? Okay.
Candice J. Frazier. I really tried to keep it simple. I mean, I had all these cute names for stuff, but I'm like, no, I'm branding me. I am branding Candice, not someone else's business. So Candice J. Frazier across the board. Wellness with Candice is Instagram. Facebook is Candice J. Frazier. And YouTube is Candice J. Frazier 1081. I think I'd have to look. It's on the list.
It's on the list. So I'll put it in the comments, and especially because I'll be sharing this on YouTube as well, and I'll definitely have it on there.
Yeah.
So it's been a pleasure, and there's so much more
that
we could talk about, but we're limited on time. So I definitely would like to ask you to be a guest again so that we can explore some of these things a little bit further for our listeners. So are you up for that?
I am absolutely up for that.
Perfect.
And then I was going to say, would you like me to read a poem?
Sure.
I have a bunch of them. What are you in the mood for? Self-love, empowerment.
Self-love.
Oh, self-love solution on page 207. And namaste, away and thrive, release negative influences and love yourself. Self-love solution. To self, embrace with loving kindness, be gentle, speak with loving awareness, move, sway, and breathe with loving graciousness. Your mind, body, and soul are delightful rareness, accompanied with curiosity and consistent self-care. Revel in the fairness, utilizing newfound awareness to give doubt and worry and fear the eyes of blindness. Self-love is the answer to confusion and madness, and it starts with awareness and mindfulness.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for sharing that. That is a perfect end to this podcast. So I thank you so much. And thank you guys for listening, and keep watching for new episodes because I'll be putting them out every week. So thank you so much. Mwah.